Hello, my name's Amy. I'm an indie author with 9 published books, and today we're doing a bit of a catch-up and a chat. It has been something like 2 months since I last filmed a video. So today I wanted to talk about why I've taken such a big break, what I've been working on, and some fairly momentous stuff that has been happening in the rest of my life. Because I haven't made a video in a while though, first of all we're going to have to rewind all the way back to the start of February. It feels like an absolute lifetime ago now, but at the start of February I went on holiday, and part of that holiday was a writing retreat in a medieval manor house in South Wales. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. I went to lots of workshops, met loads of other writers. We did ghost stories by candlelight, and I also wrote thousands and thousands of words. When I got home from this writing retreat, I felt like something had kind of changed in my writing life. I suddenly felt that I hadn't been putting as much time and energy into writing as I could have been doing. Now, I'm always pretty productive no matter what's going on, so I don't think I was slacking before I went on this retreat, but I think my priorities had shifted. I really just spent the rest of February doubling down on writing. I was incredibly productive for a few weeks after that writing retreat. I was editing my space opera, I was writing various other things. I think I had an urban fantasy on the go, some epic fantasy, some steampunk. I was jumping around between a lot of projects, but I was getting a lot done. Because of that though, a few other things took a back seat. I obviously didn't film any YouTube videos, I wasn't really on social media much, but I really just felt I needed that time to focus on my writing. I think as an indie author particularly, but as any author really in the modern writing world, it's easy to get distracted. We're constantly being told that we need a social media presence, that we need to put out free content, that we need loads of followers, that we need a platform and a brand. And all of those things are true, but there comes a point where they do become a distraction. If you're doing all of those things, but you're not writing anything, well, that's an issue. Then you are a person with a platform, not a writer. I've tended to think I've been quite good in the past about balancing these things. Writing does always come first. But in February, I just pushed things even further that way. I was spending all my time writing and none on the kind of platform side of things. And I was very happy to do that. And then March came along. Now, of course, March was a time of huge upheaval for pretty much everyone in the world. We are still in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. We are still in lockdown here in the UK. And it has changed a lot of things for a lot of people. For me though, this was compounded by the fact that we were trying to move house. Now, moving house in the middle of a pandemic, I can safely say I do not recommend. If you've watched my videos before though, you will notice this backdrop and you'll know that we didn't actually get moved, not surprisingly. Our house sale and moving process has been going on since last October though, when we put the house on the market. Things really ramped up in January and we were hoping to move probably by the end of April. In the middle of March though, because of coronavirus, our house buyers kind of panicked, said they wanted to move in a week, and we felt bound to start emptying out the house. That really was the most stressful week of my life. It was horrendous. The news about coronavirus was getting worse every single day. We were trying to move huge quantities of furniture in a small van over to my parents' house. We didn't have time to do a lot of sorting and getting rid of stuff. We'd wanted to sell a lot of furniture, but we didn't have time for that either. We were on an incredibly strict deadline and it was so very stressful. I was not sleeping very much, I wasn't eating very well, and I definitely wasn't writing. But then we got to lockdown, and you know what? It came as a bit of a relief. By the time we hit lockdown here in the UK, we had half emptied our house. Obviously, the moving process then ground to a halt. Everyone's been told to stay put, and so here we still are. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail because this moving process has been so long-winded and so stressful. Right now, we're in a position where we don't even know if the house sale is going ahead. We might be here for the rest of the year at this rate. We might be putting the house back on the market. But this is where we get back to writing. Once we weren't immediately moving in a week, everything slowed right down again. And like I said, it was a relief. I finally managed to get back to the point I'd been at in February of getting lots of writing time in. Right now, honestly, there is nothing else to do. So let's talk about what I have been writing. The big thing for me right now is writing the 4th book in my steampunk series. I've said to my readers for a while that I was going to finish this series this year, and I am finally getting on with it. I am now well over halfway through the first draft. This is my kind of official project for the month of April. I thought about doing this as a Camp NaNoWriMo project, but I decided against it. I'm already making good progress on this unnamed book. It honestly doesn't even have a code name at this point. But I'm making good progress, and I didn't really feel that camp was going to help me in any way. If anything, it was going to make things more difficult. I am setting weekly goals for myself, but they're not absolutely set in stone. So I'm not officially signed up to camp, but I am working to write roughly 30,000 words of this book in April, and I'm on track for that right now. But I've also got so many other projects in the works. Some of those ones I was working on in February are put aside at the moment. The urban fantasy has been shelved. And also, I've made some videos recently where I'm writing a novel, not in real time exactly, but I'm vlogging the process from start to finish. I did work on that book a bit during the writing retreat, but I haven't touched it since. It's a very big involved project, and I feel like I need a bit more time to get to grips with it. Also, because I wasn't really in the mood to make videos, there didn't seem like a lot of point making progress on it that I wasn't filming, as the whole point of that has been to film it from start to finish. Instead though, I am still working on my space opera series. I'm quite heavily into the edits of the first book, The Oracle's Bones. I've done one complete pass, which was working through a lot of world building issues and sort of plot and continuity issues, because I knew I had a lot of those. The next stage is going to be doing another pass for mostly character arc stuff. I've got a huge outline of changes I need to make and things I need to smooth over. I've also started writing the 2nd book in the series. The first book ended up being a bit more cliffhangery than I had intended. These books were supposed to be standalones, but that is really not how I've written them. And I may actually go straight through the first draft of the 2nd book and into the first draft of the 3rd book and just keep writing. I'll have to see later in the year how I feel. But right now, I think it might be a good idea to get all 3 books written, edit them one after another so that they can be published together, and also so that I can keep everything straight in my head. And I've got one other project that I'm working on. Back when my daughter was only a few weeks old, I came up with an idea for an epic fantasy series. I have briefly mentioned this before. I think each book will be roughly 200,000 words, and there's going to be 5 books in the series, which means 1,000,000 words. It is by far the longest and most ambitious thing I've ever attempted. And despite really wanting to work on it for the last couple of years, I've repeatedly put it off. Until now. I kind of came to the conclusion that this is one of those books that I'm going to have to make time for. I don't know how commercial a book it is. It's also going to be incredibly long, particularly if you factor in the entire series. And it's better for me as an indie author to be writing shorter books and publishing more quickly. But I just can't let this fantasy idea go. It feels very much like the book of my heart right now. It's a passion project that I absolutely want to be working on. I lose track of time when I'm drafting it. I've written something like 11,000 words, but just in that short span of time, I've become incredibly attached to the main character, or one of the main characters anyway. And I genuinely feel, even at this early stage, that it's some of the best writing I have ever done. So I am making time for it. Being in lockdown has given me that opportunity, but even if we weren't in lockdown, I think this is just one of those things that I needed to do. If I'm purely looking at the business prospects for all the books I'm working on, this would be way down at the bottom of the list. It's going to take me so long to finish each individual book. But I am so passionate about it. And I feel like I really just have to write it and give it a go, even if no one else ever reads it. So that is my end of the day project right now. When I sit down in the evening after my daughter has gone to bed, I will do a few hundred words of that book. And it's been a really nice way to wind down every evening. So that's everything I'm working on. I just wanted to finish by talking about what the last few months have taught me about my writing process. This is partly from the refocusing after the writing retreat I went on, and partly from being in lockdown right now and having nothing else to do. One thing I am really discovering is that working on multiple projects works really well for me. This is something I've tended to avoid in the past because it feels like it's not what you're supposed to do as an indie author. You're supposed to write one book as quickly as possible, edit it, and get it out there. Not jump around from week to week on different stories. This very much slows my writing process down. But you know what? I am enjoying it so much. This has been my release from boredom and burnout at the moment. And it has also made me far, far more productive than I would have been otherwise. Over the last week or so, I've written on average 2,000 words a day, and that's way above what I would normally write. Because the world is in such a strange place right now, and my own life has been so stressful recently, I've given myself permission to just work on what I want with no deadlines, no schedules, and no pressure. And of course, it has made me far more productive than usual. I've kind of always known this was the case, that I can of course work to a deadline and I will get things done, but I tend to just work as little as possible to meet the deadline. Giving myself this freedom, on the other hand, means that I just work for the sheer fun of it, and that has been a wonderful thing to rediscover. I think as an indie author, I sometimes get fixated on what I should be doing to grow my business. And that is very important. I don't want to completely lose sight of that. But at the same time, if I'm not enjoying myself, there is no point in doing this. And that is where I'm going to wrap everything up. This was supposed to be a short video, and it really hasn't been. I've been talking for 20 minutes, which I knew was going to happen. But there's been a lot to catch you guys up on. Please tell me down in the comments what you're working on and how this coronavirus pandemic has affected your writing life. I know not everyone wants to write right now, and I can completely understand that. For me, it has been a real release from stress, but only once I set aside all deadlines and pressure. Right now, I am going to sign off and get back to writing. So take care of yourselves, everyone, and I'll see you next time.